logged in just as we were going out. I felt really bad about that, by the way. So one of the things that came up is, of course, that Ira resigned both from both as chair and from the commission itself. He had time conflicts of his availability moving ahead just wasn't going to be there. So rather than try and take away from the work of the commission itself, he'll still be available as a resource, but he was not able to make the time commitment of moving ahead. With that said, I was asked to serve as chair. I said that I would, which would be sure that that's good with the people who weren't here this time. The people who were there last time didn't seem to have a problem with it, but I don't know of anyone else who'd want to do this because it's going to be a lot of work. The other request I made is at that meeting, considering the fact that when we first picked chair, there were three of us that ran. Was myself, Ira, and Jeff. With Ira going, I thought it appropriate to offer the vice chairmanship to Jeff. There were no objections to that, but Jeff wanted time to make his decision, and Jeff and I spoke this week, and he agreed. I'll let him speak to that speak to that himself in just a second. And I'm very pleased with that. I think that gives us the best skills as far as the nuts and bolts stuff go, moving ahead, so that as a group we can stay focused on what our teams are doing and what support you might need moving ahead. Chief, thanks for joining us. And I know that you were going to talk to your colleagues more and see if we can get, because now we have at least 2 vacancies on the commission itself. Looks like he clicked out. He's going to talk to his colleagues. They're going to go back over the responses that they got to the initial call for people who wanted to join the commission, see if we can find people to step up that had skills, or just were willing to step up and bring a different point of view to the process. The idea being that more hands makes light work. If that occurs, we'll bring those people up to speed pretty quickly, and then we can decide where they fit best as a group. So with that said, Jeff, would you like to talk a little bit? Speak a little bit about the fact that we're glad that you're vice chair. Well, I'm glad you're vice chair.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. No, I appreciate you asking and being able to take this on. As Craig mentioned, I am hoping to help out with some of the nuts and bolts stuff, as far as process and organization and making sure we are all moving as one unit. Although we are in our separate working groups, we're all moving as one unit towards the final product, which is the report, and, providing some support there for Craig as he does his best to steer the ship. So, again, Craig and I talked about touching base early next week and going back to everyone with, just our thoughts and stuff. So again, I'm looking forward to trying to help get a handle on this thing and push us forward. So, thanks again.
Great. Just the process that I'm going to follow is the one that we talked about from square one, which is outside. When it doesn't matter if it's in meeting times or outside of meeting times. If any of you have any questions, any concerns at any time, call, email, text. I'm available most of the time. A couple of nights I have classes. Well, a couple of days I have classes. But beyond that, I am readily available, and if I'm not, I'll get back to you very, very quickly. I will say that text or phone is usually best because, like many of you, I'm sure I get buried in email on an hourly basis. So if there's a thing that's really processing, text. That's the best way because I go to that right off the bat. Beyond that, what I'd like to do is have us go through, for those that are here, what our teams have been working on so far. Diana, I know that you had a presentation actually sort of ready to go at the last meeting. And I think I felt, as I said, I felt bad because you came in literally just as we had already said, oh yeah, we're calling out because you know what, oh, done. So if you're prepared to, I'd like you to go first because you didn't get a chance to last time, and that wasn't fair. You're on mute. Just you know. Yep, you're still not coming through sound.
Oh, you know what? I had the mechanical button on my mic.
There you go.
I apologize. No, I'm sitting here like just browsing through my notes. I just need to grab my notes real quick, so
Sure.
then I could jump back on. Or if you want to skip me, give me just
Sure.
a moment.
Sure, that's fine. Alrighty, so we will go to Martin. Can you speak for the teams that you've been working on?
Yeah, I can certainly speak to that. So basically, chairing the financial, as far as the financial committee has been going, we've been developing outlines. We've been developing our outlines a bit further on basically, financing this municipal internet service. We've made clear that basically, one of the key things that we found is that, we want to try to develop something that is self-sustaining. So I guess there's minimal long-term cost to the taxpayers. So our group has been looking at three aspects of the financing, the development, looking at, potential grants and funding opportunities, any sort of, municipal financing like loans and bonds, and looking at potential operating costs. So I think we're at a place where we have a good idea of what direction we want to take. And I was hoping at this meeting that, we could get a firm idea of what timelines there are to getting our sections of the report out, because we think we're at a place where we can start to draft our section of this report.
That would be great. What I would ask is actually two things. If there is anything you can share, if you haven't already done it, put it up on the shared drive that Jess created for us in Google. I believe there are folders for each team. Jess, can you confirm that?
Yes, there are folders for each team.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, Martin. Yes.
Yeah, so I believe actually at our last subcommittee meeting, which was 2 days ago, I think we did upload some of our outlines and such. So
okay, great. I think that's the best way that the entire group can then go in, look at it. If they have questions, they can ask questions. I'm going to just say my personal opinion on this is because you asked about time and timelines and how quickly you should move to starting the draft. I would say right now is a really good time, except for the fact that we're doing a meeting. So basically, it's as soon as you feel that you have a thing to start to draft it. They're bearing in mind that any draft will have comments. It's
of course.
Right. I'm saying is, but with that said, the better that you can put that together, the better that we're going to feel about it. And Wusu has his hand raised. I think he may have a question.
Yeah, sorry about that earlier, just phone cut off. But I just wanted to give an update. I remember from our last meeting, some of the discussions that we had was to extend the time, and I'm not sure if it was covered, but I brought that issue to council colleagues, and they all are in full support, and we have extended it to June 15th. So that would be the new deadline for a preliminary report for this. And then also I'm working with Danielle to come up with and other members to see if there's a way that we can expedite new members to the commission. Right now, just bring it up to leadership, and we just try to hash it out the best way to, get the support that you guys need. Whether we have to do an open interview process, or leadership could just appoint someone after their interview. Right,
because we're down 2 people at this point.
Correct.
If we could get two, that would be great, but at least one would really be a help. Especially when we start the review and the editing process. Again, not knowing, not having seen the paper of the other people that applied that didn't get put on the commission to start with. I really can't speak to skill sets that anyone has, but I'm sure that you and the leadership are very familiar with it. And I trust your sense of this. I know that you're solidly committed to what we're trying to do. So we couldn't be in better hands from my point of view. So that said, thank you very much for that. I think the 15th of June is a great date to move to. And with that said, I'm going to go on briefly to our next point, which is the timeline moving ahead. And then I'm going to go to Diana for her presentation if she's ready. I'd like us to meet twice a month right now, as far as these kind of meetings go. So this would be it. We wouldn't meet next week. We would meet the following week. We can talk about setting up a calendar so that people have all those dates reserved. It might save you a little email each week. And then we look at team meetings in between that. And I'd like the leadership team to meet on the alternate weeks and as needed to keep the ball rolling. Basically, with any team, if you've got a draft, let the group know that you've got a draft or that you have a thing that you want the group to look at, even if it's between meetings. We'll go to the share drive and we'll weigh in. If you say, can you get back to us within 3 days? Here's the date that we want finalized by. That's fine. You know, that's a normal course of doing business. Once we collectively put the pieces together, and some of what comes from the different teams may guide what other teams do. And this is the thing. It all feeds into the meat grinder. Okay, we're making a sausage. We're doing the thing that no one wants to see. We're seeing how we're making the sausage. We're making the sausage at this point. So what comes out is going to taste great. We hope. What goes in, some is good, some is you don't want to know, but it gets the job done. And the money is key. So Martin, thank you, and thank that team for working on that. That's absolutely great. Day, I'm going to move on to you next. So if you want to talk about where your team's at, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I did upload the FTTH model to the shared drive, as well as a visual that I created and Visio of like the interior workings of like fiber optics itself. But I do have an explanation on why we would think that FTTH is the best proposed model. Bear with me, this could be a little bit of a mouthful, so I try to make it pretty condensed. So with fiber to the home, it is a fiber optic communication delivery form where the fiber extends from a central office, which is shown in a diagram, to the boundary of a home, living space, or business office. Fiber to the home is a process that involves installing optical fiber at a central location before running fiber optic cables to homes, apartments, businesses that surround it. It is important for the initial optical fiber to be put in a position that will allow it to deliver the benefit of fiber optics to as many people as it possibly can. Once the central location has been established and the right designs for it are in place, it will be up to a company, which is something I believe that we do need to at least right now deliberate on who could possibly help surface with that. It will be up to a company that specializes in fiber optics to use the right materials to put the location together. It will also then be up to them to then run fiber optic cables from the central location to the homes, apartments, and businesses and such in the surrounding area. The company may opt to use what is called fiber to the curb, FTTC service. I haven't seen too many solid concrete examples of that, but in most cases, that involves running fiber optic cables to the curbs of homes and businesses before the copper cables can then go from the curb to the homes and businesses and such. But whenever possible, fiber to the home would be the best option whenever available. So to explain like actually how the technology works, in a fiber optic cable system, you have an information signal, which is an incoming electric signal. Fiber optic cable uses strands of glass to transmit light. The light then pulses transmit the communication signals between the devices. These light pulses transport electronic data up to about like 900 megabits per second. That's more than like 100 times faster than the traditional non-fiber methods like coaxial cable, which is in most households right now. To use a fiber optic cable, you have to turn the electric signal into light. This is done on the transmitter side, which is shown in the diagram that I have uploaded, using a device called an emitter. The emitter might be, for example, a LED, which means like light emitting diode, or a FP far paired laser diode. At the center of the fiber optic strand is a small inner core that carries the light. The surrounding core outside of that is called the outer cladding. Both the core and the cladding are glass, but have different what is called refractive indexes, which basically mean the light travels at different speeds throughout the materials. The result is that the light pulses produced from lasers at one end of a fiber optic cable are then sent through the fiber optic core and are reflected back to the core when the light hits the fiber optic cladding, which helps keep the light within the center core. When the light travels down the core, it remains in the core and it never leaves it. It never leaves the, never entering the cladding, excuse me. This is because like the two materials chosen for core and cladding are carefully selected to ensure that the total internal refraction occurs. That means that as light enters the boundary between the core and cladding, it is bent in a way that it remains in the core. On the receiver side, the light signal, which has made it through the fiber optic cable, must be returned as the electric signal. That job is done using a detector. The detector, for example, may be called like a pin diode or avalanche photodiode. These light pulses transmit like electronic data up to like 100 megabits per second. As I mentioned, that is still pretty fast. It's way better than a coaxial cable, which most internet service providers and cable providers provide right now. The light pulses are converted to the electric signals via like optical like network terminals and distributed through the home through phone service, digital TV, and internet. As of right now, with current FCC regulation, it requires that broadband services must be at a minimum speed of like 25 megabits per second for downloads and at least 5 megabits per second for uploads. And fiber optic definitely more than meets that. And that's what I have. And hopefully, I probably should have shared my screen, but if you were following along, you will see it visually illustrated in the diagram.
No, that's great. And actually it's good to have the nuts and bolts of how the process itself works. One of the things related to that, and you really made a couple of really good points in there about this, the difference between the FTTH and the FTTC.
Mm-hmm.
There would be some extra steps involved if we do the FTTC.
Of course, yes.
And so that would need to be factored into cost. The other thing which we may want to start to think about, and actually I'm sorry he's not here because he'd actually be the person I go to for the mapping part of this. We need to look at mapping rights of way.
Okay.
Which would help, which would team up well with the the diagram that you've done, so that we can determine what the preferred pathways are to cover the areas that we're looking to cover. And so that when a presentation is made or a bid is put out for services, we can say, here's what we have going in. This is the preferred path that the city used. The good news is the rights of way are already already secured. So that would, I think, be a bonus for anyone that was looking to bid. Because one of the concerns is what kind of legal rings do we have to jump through to get the right of way?
Yeah, exactly.
You see that with phone, you see that with power, you see that with anything else. So if we're confining ourselves to the city, which is what we are going to do, at least for now, that becomes a critical component. The other thing to look at is, I know that one of the options from the original document that was done before we were created as a group looked at FTTH type plans, where it had an FTTH element and then a station element built into it, and that may be sort of the FTTC type of plan. So what we know that our preferred is FTTH because that's the fastest,
Correct.
that's the best, that gives us the best long-term way to go. The good news is, based on the last reading I had of the federal money coming down, it would guarantee the speeds that we would need to have to qualify for federal money if we can get it. There are still some hangups with that outside of that because we're a city and not a town. If we were rural, the money's clear. Yes, you have the money here, we'll throw it at you in bales. Cities were originally getting the dirty end of the stick because the original plan with that money was to go to those areas that are not served, not just not served well, but not served. And the initial claim out of the federal government was there's no city that isn't served. Cities are served. May not be served well, they may not be served completely, but they're served. So they were barring cities and looking at towns, villages, rural counties, and all that kind of thing. That is a point of dispute which is working its way through the federal process. I have not heard an update on that. So that's something we want to research. But I know that a lot of elected representatives who are up for office this year are very concerned because a lot of them represent, cities who really want large pools of money to do broadband.
Exactly.
So, and those are the people that say, well, yes, that rule making is okay. So I would expect it to go our way, or at least an alternative path to get to some piece of that funding. I think one of the things we want to look at too, and I know Martin, your team's been looking at that. There are some interesting expansions coming from the state at this point for municipal broadband that are part of the upcoming budget. Not just last year's budget, but the upcoming one. And it would be good if we got in early on that. So we may need to do some research on what the application procedures will be if they've even started to draft them yet for those funds. We can reach out. Jess, I'm not sure if that's something that needs to be run, and I'll say Jess and Ray, you both, that's something that needs to be run by the city council, by the corp council, by the corp council, if they've been tracking that at all.
I don't believe they have, but I can ask Maurice and see if they have.
Great.
We'll verify.
Yeah, that would be great, because I know we've been going up the hill for a lot of different pots of money, and we've been getting them, which is really great news.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this could be added to that list.
Absolutely.
I just want to be sure that any report that we produce reflects the information that's needed to pursue that process.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Speaking for our own team, I know that we've each been proceeding to continue to look at comparison cities. We do have an initial document up that we're filling in that's on the shared site. I hope to take a little time this next week and sort of start to cull it down to key points coming from those cities. Right now, as I say, I know the one did have a low income option where at a minimum they were getting, it was reduced to a ridiculously low price point per month, or in some cases free. So far, we found one city that's doing that. Out in Colorado, that's Fort Collins. I'm sure there are more, but so far we haven't found them. So we want to do a little more targeted research on that, because I know that is one of the options that we had talked about. Was, quite honestly, we want to be able to build within the pricing structure for this, a way to create an option where those who absolutely do not have the ability to pay for it have at least have the access for themselves, for their children, where if we have to go back to remote learning or anything else, they're not sitting in a car or worse, next to a place that has free Wi-Fi just to get their homework done. That's ridiculous. So I think we can do it. But I do want to be sure that's something we consider within the pricing structure itself. I think that, and I'll throw this at the group, I think that should be a specific recommendation that we include in any draft of the report. Because that's the way we're going to get community buy-in across the board, I think, which is really important to the success of this. That's really the team leads we have here tonight. Caitlin, were you, I know you've been sort of laid up, so I'm not sure.
I'll give a very brief update, which Jeff knows that I haven't been in touch, so I apologize. I had some personal things come up at the end of the year, but I do have a feeler out to the Public Service Commission just to see if someone's willing to talk. There aren't a lot of models for municipalities in New York who have done this, so I was curious to see if someone would just tell me why they thought that was the case. I've done a little bit of legal work just by myself, but Jeff, I'll be in touch with you and also with Scott shortly so we can kind of put this all together.
Great.
And Craig, I made a note per your commentary earlier, if there's legal material that needs to be looked at for the funding sources, I think that's appropriate for us to look at as well. So we can do
totally
that. And the other half of that is very brief report from sort of the Community Connections Working Group. I have some friends with the bid and some other organizations that have made comments in the past about how poor internet services downtown. So I'm hoping to see if someone will talk to me just about what their experience is, and maybe we have something there too.
I think that's great. Great, and again, we're glad that you're feeling that you're feeling better and that you're back with us. It's not fun being sick or being laid up. The other thing is, there was a thing that you may want to, a person you may want to reach out to, and I'll email you the name. The Center for the Center for Technology and Government just released a new guide, I want to say 2 weeks ago, on municipal broadband, not just in New York State, but focused with New York State as well. And they included in that, I believe, at least a brief reference to some of the legal entanglement, to some of the legal requirements. I can get you the name of the person that put it together, and they might be a good point of reference, because at a minimum, they could send you perhaps some of the details that didn't make it into the final guide, because it's more of a big picture than here are all the pieces. And I spoke to the research director there, and I have to because she's my PhD advisor. And I said, any help that you can give would be great. She said, anything you need, just ask.
That's great.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. She's been great with it. I know the other person who's working on that kind of material for them, but she's more cybersecurity focused, is Megan Cook, who's been doing a lot of work with the Association of Towns and the cities. They just put out a guide for the cybersecurity side of things this past week. But she might be able to provide some guidance as well. So I'll get that contact data to you.
Thank you, Craig.
Sure, you got it. Okay. Jeff, was there anything else that you want to add?
I think I'm all good. Thank you, Craig.
Okay. Luke, is there anything that you wanted to add, or just in case we had a tech question?
Yeah, pretty much. Nothing to add here, just in case you had any questions.
Alrighty. Diana, was there anything else you wanted to bring up or ask about?
Nope, all set.
Okay. Martin, what about you?
Yeah, I have no comments.
Okay. Well, is there anything that anyone else wanted to bring up at all at this point?
I actually just have one thing. So a couple meetings ago, we had talked about the meeting in person versus meeting virtually.
Right.
And at the time there was legislation on the floor to extend it through the end of the public health emergency. But that has changed. So the executive order, I believe it's 11.3, says that virtual meetings can continue through March 16th. Whether or not that's going to be extended again, I'm not sure. But that's our new date. So I believe we'll have 2 meetings again before March 16th. So we'll be able to kind of play it by ear, but just wanted to bring that up and let you guys know that.
That's a good point. Just I'll be intrigued to see what they do. My hope, quite honestly, is that they do extend it, because not that I want to see you folks in person. Believe me, it'll be fine. But from a public health point of view, caution's a good idea for a while yet, based on the math that I've been seeing recently.
I also think this is a very accessible forum for people in the community who might want to watch this from home remotely.
I agree. The only people I would say that can't, quite honestly, are the people we're looking to create municipal broadband to serve. So at some point, I think we are going to have to do that outreach to the community. But I would prefer to do that with a draft report and and some things for them to consider, that their council people can share within their different areas, that may get us a better turnout for that type of session. And we can look at that towards the better weather, I think would be the time that we'd be seeing that. Preferably before the June 15th date, if we have something to share and just get some input. But I would think the earliest that would be end of April, beginning of May, which would then gives a few weeks to sort of tweak based on any feedback that we got back. We'll need to talk about if we do that, where those meetings would be, and when those meetings would be, basically. If we do the sort of community feedback thing, as someone who's done a lot of that with the community policing group, I would suggest we actually go out into the communities. Some people say, well, you can meet at City Hall. Yes, but people still have to get to City Hall. And a lot of people feel sort of odd about going to City Hall.
And there's no parking there.
Yeah, and there's no parking. And the other thing is, even if they don't have a car, if they're walking, it's a long walk. So we're asking them for something, we should go to them, is the attitude that I take with that. I'm open to ideas on it, but that's just one person's opinion. Other than that, that's all I have for right now. If no one has anything further, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I will so move after confirming that our next meeting would be March 3rd at 5:30 p.m.
Yes, it would.
Okay, I will move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second? Because we do need a second for the motion.
Second.
Perfect. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, great. Thanks so much, folks, and we'll be in touch early next week. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Caitlin.
Have a great
Thanks, Dan.
night.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Jess. See ya.